This episode of Marijuana Today Daily is brought to you by our friends over at the Home of Medicine Medical Marijuana Provisioning Center of Ann Arbor, Michigan. Now located at their new first floor spot at 111 South Main Street in downtown Ann Arbor, the Home of Medicine is now even easier to get to than their longtime walk-up location across the street. Find out what everyone is talking about and why a lot of OHM's patients drive long distances to get their medicine there. With a no sales pressure atmosphere and an interior designed to make their patients feel at home and comfortable talking about their medical needs, the Home of Medicine just feels like the kind of place you should be getting your medical cannabis from. Swing over to homeofmedicine.org to learn more about what makes the Home of Medicine so special. And if you're lucky enough to be in or near the Ann Arbor area, make sure to stop in and tell the folks at the Home of Medicine that I said hello. One more time, that's homeofmedicine.org, which is spelled O-M-O-F medicine.org. Good morning, Marijuana Nation. It's Tuesday, September 18th, 2018, and you're tuned in to episode 572 of Marijuana Today Daily. I'm your host, Shay Gunther, and I'll be walking you through today's marijuana news and headlines. As always, we have a full and busy day of cannabis news in our hands, so let's jump right into it. Our top story today is the big news that the Coca-Cola company is in talks with the Canadian licensed marijuana provider Aurora Cannabis to develop drinkable forms of cannabis-infused beverages, specifically CBD-rich drinks that don't get you high but do tap into your desire for wellness. Bloomberg News broke this one and is reporting that Aurora's stock experienced a sizable jump in price after word got out. A spokesperson for Coke told Bloomberg in an email, quote, "We are closely watching the growth of non-psychoactive CBD as an ingredient in functional wellness beverages around the world. The space is evolving quickly. No decisions have been made at this time," unquote. Coke's entry into the cannabis market couldn't be a bigger indicator of the rapidly growing mainstream acceptance of all things marijuana. Not a bad story to read in full. Chris Roberts, writing for Leafly, has a good story up about a loophole being used by New York City police officers to arrest people for having marijuana. Despite a raft of recent pronouncements by various New York City law enforcement officials that NYPD cops would no longer be busting people for just having pot on them. As Chris is reporting, instead of arresting people for having marijuana flower on them, New York City cops are now going after folks with vape pens and charging them with possessing THC oil, which is defined separately from marijuana flower by law. Possessing THC oil is chargeable as a misdemeanor and can carry a sentence of up to a year in jail. That's ridiculous. Chris sought comment from the New York City police on Sunday and yesterday, but has been so far unable to get a response. This is another good one to read in full. Wrapping up today's top stories brings us out to Michigan, where yesterday state regulators with the Department of Licensing and Regulatory Affairs, also known as LORA, met and discussed the possibility of allowing for statewide marijuana delivery. LORA officials have been studying the issue for months, and a department spokesperson told the Detroit Free Press, quote, "Now that the Bureau of Medical Marijuana Regulation has had enough time to research the issue, we've decided that it is a benefit for the state's patients and can be done in a safe manner," unquote. The state is accepting public comments on the proposed idea until Friday and will then develop a draft of rules governing how medical marijuana can be delivered, which must then be approved by a state legislative committee. If all goes well, Michiganders could see medical marijuana delivery open up as an option by the end of the year. Those are our top stories for today. It's time for Marijuana Today Daily Headlines Blitz. Before we blitz it in headlines, let's quickly thank our sponsor, the Home of Medicine Medical Marijuana Provisioning Center of Ann Arbor, Michigan. The folks over at the Home of Medicine are longtime supporters of our work here at MJ Today Media, and we're super excited about all the big changes going on the Michigan legal marijuana front. The Home of Medicine has been right there in the medical marijuana trenches for many, many years now and has managed to stick around and build a solid and growing base of patient customers because they focus on their patients and getting them the medicine that will make them feel best. That patient-centric philosophy translates into a buying experience for OHM's patients that is long on individualized and attentive care and totally devoid of any kind of sales pressure. OHM's patients sit down with OHM's educated and knowledgeable staff in a one-on-one setting and have all the time they need to consider their options. OHM's one of the few medical marijuana dispensaries around to have a full-time doctor on staff, so Dr. Evan is always there to answer any particularly hard medical cannabis questions. Get a sense of what makes the the Ohm of Medicine special by opening up ohmofmedicine.org, which again is spelled omofmedicine.org. Big thanks to everyone at the Ohm of Medicine for the support that makes today's news possible. All right, time for the Blitz. Yesterday, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints issued a 9-page memo about the medical marijuana ballot measure set to go before Utah voters in the fall. The memo was drafted by a Salt Lake City law firm on behalf of the church and was made in response to a rebuttal to an earlier document the church had released diving into the purported negative effects of medical cannabis ballot measure Proposition 2. That rebuttal ripped into the original analysis point by point and accused the church of making misleading arguments about medical cannabis. This one is pretty rich in detail, so I'd direct you over to the Salt Lake Tribune for the full read. As always, we have all the news we cover linked to on our website at mjtodaydaily.com and on our Twitter account at mjtodaydaily. Leafly, which in addition to writing news about legal marijuana, maintains a rather well-trafficked listing of cannabis companies, and just announced that it would be removing non-licensed Canadian marijuana companies from its books as of next month. Leafly is timing the changeover for October 17th, the day on which the entire nation will adopt legal adult use marijuana. Marijuana Business Daily is reporting that High Times Holdings, the parent company of High Times Magazine and the High Times Cannabis Cup, has raised just over $5 million in funding through a crowdfunding scheme that it says has attracted 6,000 investors. That's an impressive haul, but still a little short of the $17.2 million it needs to get listed on the NASDAQ stock market and far below the $50 million the company says it wants to raise. High Times has been hit with declining revenues and took a loss in 2017 of just under $25 million. As Oklahoma rolls out its new medical marijuana program, a number of towns and cities in the state have adopted or planning to adopt severe zoning restrictions that would all but block dispensaries from being opened up within their borders. State law demands that dispensaries be at least 1,000 feet from schools, but additional local zoning laws are being enacted that add in churches and public parks and daycare centers, in effect banning medical shops from opening up at all. It's not clear right now what will happen with this storyline, as there are some within the state legislature calling for a special session to clear things up. This one, like Oklahoma's program, is ever developing. Some good news out of Louisiana, as yesterday state regulators lifted a previous restriction on doctors that limited them to recommending medical cannabis to no more than 100 patients. That's a problem in a state where just 48 doctors have signed up to become recommending agents and where demand is expected to far exceed 4,800 registered patients. Another restriction that was lifted was one that required patients to revisit their doctors every 3 months to maintain their recommendation. Tom Angel over Marijuana Moments picked up on an amendment that was added to a proposed U.S. House bill expanding the government's research medical marijuana cultivation program that would require the federal government to maintain a list of best practices for growing cannabis. The bill was approved out of committee last week and was submitted by Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz, who you should remember for being a traitorous anti-American Trump sycophant. But he's also a little bit pro-pot, so yay. Swing over to Tom's story on Marijuana Moments for more on this one. And let me just take this opportunity to relay a message to any listener who's thinking about writing in to whine about me being anti-Trump. Stop being such a baby snowflake. I don't care if me being mean to Trump hurts your delicate feelings. He's a cancer on the world, and this is my show. We wrap up today on a bit of a bizarre note as we swing up to my corner of the country here in Maine, where a seafood restaurant is getting some headlines for the new method used in its kitchen to cook lobster. Maine is rather well known for its lobster, which are caught in abundance off our coast and served up in innumerable seaside restaurants, most often boiled or steamed alive. Charlotte Gill, the owner of Charlotte's legendary Lobster Pound in Southwest Harbor, had a better idea. Ahead of tossing her lobsters into boiling water to be cooked up, they are first treated to marijuana smoke pumped through their water. Seriously, Ms. Gill says the smoking treatment mellows the lobster ahead of their final swim. Those are the headlines and news for the day. I'll be back with you again tomorrow morning with another information-packed episode of Marijuana Today Daily. But in the meantime, if you have any stories to share or feedback to give, zip us an email to headlines@mjtodaydaily.com. And while you're clicking around the interwebs, swing over to our Twitter account at mjtodaydaily and visit our website at mjtodaydaily.com to find links to all the news we cover. Thanks to our sponsor, the Ohm of Medicine, and to all of our awesome patron listeners for the support that makes this show possible. To join the illustrious ranks of the patron listeners yourself, swing over to our website at mjtodaydaily.com and click on that big blue button at the top of the page that says Become a Patron. I'm your host, Shay Gunther. Thanks for tuning and starting your day with marijuana today. Today.
One take, Shay. One take.